following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Thank you, Larry. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, August 12th. Your readers today are
Larry Beena
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. But remember, folks, if you're traveling in the South Towns today, have patience. Remember, it's opening day of the Erie County Fair. Partly sunny today with a thunderstorm in parts of the area in the afternoon, a high of 81. Partly cloudy tonight with a shower in spots, low 64. Partial sunshine tomorrow with a thunderstorm in one or two spots, a high of 80 and a low of 61. For Friday, mostly sunny and nice, high 78, low 57. Saturday, partly sunny and pleasant, high 78, low 59. Sunday, afternoon showers, high 78, low 63. For Monday, a few morning showers, high 75, low 61. For Tuesday, mostly sunny, high 78, low 62. The pollen count today is moderate. Sunrise was at 6:18 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:22 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. AG's office cannot pursue charges in refugee's death. Albany. Attorney General Letitia James has informed Erie County District Attorney Michael Keene that her office is unable to investigate the death of Myanmar refugee Nurul Amin Shah Alam for a possible crime due to lack of authority and jurisdiction. But the Attorney General told Keene nothing prevents the District Attorney from acting on its ongoing investigation into the death of Shah Alam, 56, which was ruled a homicide according to a copy of the August 3rd letter provided to the Buffalo News. Investigative Post was first reported that James could not continue the criminal probe. The New York State Attorney General's office has notified District Attorney Keene of their determination. Keene's spokesperson, Caitlin Monroe, said, "At this time, our investigation into the death of Nurul Amin Shah Alam remains ongoing. We understand the public interest in this case and will provide an update at the appropriate time." On February 19th, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents picked up Shah Alam, who was mostly blind and did not speak English, from the Erie County Jail and dropped him off in jail-issued booties instead of shoes in freezing temperatures outside a closed Tim Hortons restaurant in Black Rock. He was found dead 5 days later. In March, the Buffalo News reported that James' Office of Special Investigation, or OSI, had begun investigating the incident. The office investigates every death in the state that may have been caused by a police officer or peace officer, such as a correction officer. It can then present evidence to a grand jury to potentially indict the officers on criminal charges or issue a report to state why criminal charges were not brought. In the August 3rd letter, James told Keene it did not appear Shah Alam's death met the requirements for OSI to conduct a criminal investigation because the office lacked investigative authority and criminal jurisdiction. James said the law contained no language allowing OSI to investigate federal law enforcement officers, such as the BPB officers who dropped off Shah Alam. James said OSI asked CBP to identify the agents involved and produced all relevant records, but that David Blanks, the top border agent in Buffalo, declined, referring OSI to a portal to file a Freedom of Information Act request. To date, CBP has provided OSI with no records aside from this refusal letter, James told Keene, adding that the only information available from CBP was its statement reported in the Buffalo News. Should you decide to take any additional action on this matter, my office stands ready to serve as a resource in any way that would be helpful. I look forward to our continuing partnership. James still plans to launch a non-criminal investigation into the incident through its Law Enforcement Misconduct Investigative Office, or LEMIO, to examine whether they point to any systemic issues that need to be addressed, the letter stated. Throughout his address and year-long incarceration, Mr. Shah Alam, who spoke only Rohingya and was severely visually impaired, appears to have faced profound barriers to communicating with law enforcement, jail staff, medical providers, and the legal system, James told Keene. Questions have been raised about whether adequate accommodations were provided for his language and disability needs, whether his medical concerns were appropriately addressed, and whether his prolonged detention exacerbated his vulnerability. James added, "As you are already aware, our Limeo investigation in no way precludes you and your office from taking action on this case. CBP did not issue an immediate comment on the Attorney General's letter." Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Ghost gunmaker sentenced to 41 months in prison. A one-time Second Amendment enthusiast linked to over 200 firearms and 3D printed machine gun conversion devices was sentenced Tuesday to 41 months in federal prison. Peter Celentano, 37, of the Genesee County village of Bergen, said he regretted his actions ahead of his sentencing for illegal possession of machine guns. "I used to be an enthusiastic Second Amendment enthusiast, and in my error and many poor decisions over the years, I went much too far with my hobby, resulting in my crimes," Celentano said in a letter to U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo. "I grieve all the damage and suffering caused to all involved, especially to my wife and son," Celentano said. Villardo called it mind-boggling, the damage 3D printed firearms inflict on communities. "It's stomach-turning how firearms are killing people and destroying families," Villardo said, calling Celentano's offense a serious crime. An anonymous call to 911 prompted the investigation. During a search of his home in September 2024, law enforcement found 3D printed pistol frames, firearm parts and accessories, ammunition reloading equipment, tools for constructing privately made firearms, a drill press, and 2 3D printed machine gun conversion devices. Authorities also suspected Celentano had moved or disposed of evidence. The state police, Genesee County Sheriff's Office, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives searched other properties in Orleans and Genesee counties, seizing AR-style lower receivers, 3D printed handguns, and additional firearm parts and accessories in a shed, an apartment, and an RV in Lindenville and Medina. Other evidence of his ghost gun business ended up in the Erie Canal. During the investigation, law enforcement also interviewed a friend of Celentano's who said Celentano had provided him with 9 lower receivers and that 2 of those receivers contained the 3rd pinhole, making them machine guns, according to Celentano's plea agreement. The friend's father disposed of those firearms by throwing them off the Beals Road Bridge into the Erie Canal. A police dive team located and recovered a cardboard box containing AR-style receivers, an unmarked handgun, ammunition magazines, and other firearm parts. The AFT examined the firearms and found them to be operable. Machine gun conversion devices are parts that, when properly inserted into or added to a firearm, convert the firearm to fully automatic. They are parts designed and intended exclusively for use in converting a weapon to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. The crime carries a maximum possible sentence of 10 years, but the judge sentenced Celentano to the lower end of the advisory sentencing guidelines, based in part on his remorse, lack of criminal history, and letters from his family showing a strong support system. Celentano earned a Master of Arts degree in music performance in 2012 and later a doctorate in music performance from Stony Brook University. His family support letters indicate he is fascinated with how things work, often repairing and improving upon designs. His expertise extends to brass instrument repair and composing. He taught himself database management, leading to employment at a Stony Brook hospital, a startup in Rochester, and eventually Amazon Web Services. Villardo said he could understand Celentano wanting to make things with 3D printers. But why weapons? The judge asked him. His post-incarceration conditions include not using 3D printers to make parts for weapons. If you want to play with 3D machines, you can make a lot of stuff, but you cannot make a weapon, Velardo told him. The judge cited Celentano's talents and zero criminal history before his crime. To say this is an aberration is an understatement, Velardo said. I don't get it. Celentano has been in custody since his 2024 arrest, detained by a magistrate judge's order after a prosecutor cited profanity-laden social media posts allegedly from Celentano on an anonymous social media account. The posts included, "AR-15s are for killing cops, and I'm here to arm the masses." While incarcerated as his case proceeded, Celentano has studied the Bible and ministered to other inmates, according to a letter to the judge from his family. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Transferring stadium ownership, bittersweet. This was our baby, Poloncarz says, but it was the right move. Erie County quietly transferred the entire Buffalo Bills stadium campus to the state last week. The lack of fanfare does not suggest it was not a major event. For the first time in 2 generations, the physical home of the Buffalo Bills belongs to an entity beyond Western New York. County Executive Mark Poloncarz, who was responsible for negotiating 2 stadium lease deals with the Bills, says it was the right thing to do for taxpayers, but he still feels a pang. There's a bittersweetness to it from a standpoint of, that was our baby, he said. However, also looking back at the millions and millions of dollars that were spent, not just for construction, but for the annual maintenance and the money that will be saved by the county in the long run, without even considering lawsuits and things like that, makes it such that it was the right thing. Estimating the cost of stadium ownership to county taxpayers is difficult because those costs dates back more than 55 years, but the dollar signs are everywhere. Although the 1973 stadium was completed for $22 million, equivalent to about $165 million in today's dollars, the old stadium had cost county hundreds of millions in contractually required maintenance, upgrades, debt, and insurance costs. The new stadium, meanwhile, has cost the county $250 million in direct construction costs, but the true county cost, adding in debt and inspection expenses, swells to nearly $322 million. The Buffalo News estimated total Bills Stadium construction and ownership costs at both sites based on the news archives and analysis of Erie County budget data since 1998, including insurance and debt service costs. Insights from Budget Director Mark Cornell. Other conservative assumptions about prior investment, borrowing costs, and inflation. In today's dollars, that cost is estimated at more than $800 million. That doesn't account for everything. It doesn't account for all liability costs. Actual county maintenance expenses for the stadium over the first 25 years are also difficult to quantify. Poloncarz, however, pointed out that the county recouped considerable revenue through stadium naming rights and concessions revenue until former Bills owner Ralph Wilson wrested away those revenue streams from the county in 1998. It irked Mr. Wilson to no end that not only was the football stadium that he wanted named after a business, he was making no money on it, Poloncarz recalled, of the original Rich Stadium named for Rich products. Once the county lost its revenue streams, the ongoing taxpayer burden for stadium construction and maintenance kept piling up. Liability insurance for sheriff's deputies working at the stadium also skyrocketed. In addition, legal exposure for injuries to stadium owners remained an ongoing threat. With the state assuming stadium ownership, the cost of the Bills Stadium is now spread out over a much larger group of taxpayers. It was always my goal, if we got to this point, to get the county out of the stadium business. The county will not completely wash its hands of Bills Stadium business. The county's Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Sheriff's Office, and Department of Public Works will continue to play a role. Abbott Road, which fronts the stadium, will need to be owned and maintained by Erie County, and the potential for a deal to add sidewalks along the roadway remains under construction. The county will also collect a ticket surcharge from spectators. The county surcharge will go into a pot of money to be spent on agreed-upon stadium projects as part of the new stadium deal. But there's no denying that the leverage, control, and decision-making authority that the county used to wield over stadium operations will diminish. If we no longer have any ownership interest, then we probably shouldn't have the same influence. But the way that the agreement is structured in future years, the county is still going to play a role with regards to determination of future projects with the money that's generated from the surcharge, as well as what the state and the bills are required to put in. The county will also continue to handle stadium traffic operations and be reimbursed by the team for safety and security provided by the county's Department of Homeland Security and Sheriff's Office. The county's still going to have a role, but it's different. If somebody bumps off of a car or jumps off of a car into a flaming holding table in parking lot and hurts themselves, that's happened before. They can't sue the county because we no longer are an owner of the property. And trust me, people sued for all kinds of things. If the county loses influence over the Bills' new stadium in exchange for keeping more money in the bank, he said, that's a fair trade, even if others may not see it as clearly. I know in the long run it will have helped the county out financially, he said. And we kept a team here. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:16. Today in history, August 12th, 1851, New Yorker Isaac M. Singer patented his sewing machine. The device revolutionized clothes production and freed up enormous amounts of time for women. 1877, American astronomer S.F. Hall discovered the first of Mars' 2 moons, which he named Deimos. 1898, Spain signed an armistice with the United States, ending combat in the Spanish-American War. The agreement dissolved the Spanish Empire, which ceded Puerto Rico to the U.S. government and gave up control of Cuba. 1953, the Soviet Union detonated its first hydrogen bomb in Kazakhstan. It had less power than the one in the United States was testing, but it was more portable. 1981, IBM introduced its first personal computer with 16 kilobytes of memory, 2 programs, and no storage. 1990, paleontologist Susan Hendrickson discovered 3 huge bones on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. They were part of one of the biggest and best preserved Tyrannosaurus rex skeletons ever found. And in 2009, former San Francisco Board of Supervisors member Harvey Milk was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama. Milk, the first avowedly gay elected lawmaker in the United States, was assassinated in 1978. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial, Rush Job. Buffalo's Charter Revision Commission has handicapped in numerous ways. Buffalo's latest charter revision effort jumped across the finish line late, disorganized, and with less to show for the effort than there might have been had the city given the process the time and attention it deserved. Still, 11 proposed changes to the city's founding document will go before voters in November. Given the backstory of the process, perhaps getting there at all counts as an accomplishment. The city set this commission up poorly, and precious time was then spent badly. The result? Significant questions never received the consideration needed to reach voters. Nevertheless, the commission produced some potentially meaningful reforms, and the most important procedural lesson may be that Buffalo should never again wait decades and then rush a charter review. The last Charter Review Commission, convened in 1995, had 2 years to complete its work. This commission had 16 months and a limited budget. City government squandered 4 of those months before commissioners were even appointed. The commission was supposed to begin meeting in December 2024, as the News' Justin Sondel reported, but the council did not vote to appoint commissioners until April 2025. Outside counsel Phillips Lytle advised the commission that it did not have to abide by open meetings laws, even though members intended to follow the rules regardless, according to Lawrence Rubin, who served as chair of the commission. A commission already deprived of precious months could hardly afford to spend 2 meetings debating whether it should conduct its business openly when its members were prepared to do so anyway. The commission's work spanned a change in administration following Sean Ryan's election as mayor, along with several resignations and replacement appointments. The measures worth voters' attention include allowing the council to fill a vacancy on the legislative body when the council president is serving as acting mayor in the event that the mayor resigns or is unable to serve. Establishing a task force to study and make recommendations on election reforms. Requiring the establishment of a charter revision commission at least once every 10 years. Creating a civilian police advisory commission. Election reform itself did not make the ballot. Instead, voters will consider creating a task force to study it further. Such significant proposals deserved enough time to be thoroughly researched, debated, and either advanced or rejected on their merits. One measure on the ballot gives additional grower powers to the city controller to offer recommendations on revenue and expenditure amounts in the mayor's proposed budget. The Common Council could then implement those recommendations through a vote. However, voters should carefully consider expanding the authority of an independently elected comptroller and how that additional power could affect the balance among the comptroller, mayor, and Common Council. There are other measures on the ballot, but the 10-year requirements should not be treated as just another ballot measure. If approved, it would prevent another decades-long gap between comprehensive reviews. City government made this commission's work harder than it needed to be. That should not happen again. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News, and it shows a Buffalo Bills fan, and he's there. He's got all the Bills logos that he's wearing in his hat and his shirt, and he's carrying a red Solo cup of something or other, and he looks shocked because there's hands coming out taking money from him. And one hand is labeled tailgating fees, another one is labeled PSLs, and another hand is labeled stadium shortcuts. And the second cartoon is by Tom Stiglich of Creator Syndicate, and it shows male and female. They look like college kids. They're exiting like a Starbucks type of establishment, and so they've got their drinks in their hand, and the girl says, "Did the barista thank you for the generous tip?" And the young man says, "She said the service industry is rooted in white supremacy and tipping is racist." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Good energy policy must be nonpartisan. Last month, I traveled to Washington, D.C. with Citizens Climate Lobby to join hundreds of Americans from across the country in meetings with members of Congress and their staff. During CCL's conference and lobby day on Capitol Hill, I met with the office of Representative Claudia Tenney and other members of Congress around the state to discuss policies that can strengthen America's energy future while addressing the challenges of climate change. As a lifelong Republican who lives on a farm in a rural farming community, I understand how closely our livelihoods are tied to the natural world. Farmers know that stewardship is a responsibility and that taking care of our land, water, and air is something that should unite us, not divide us. I encourage Congress to support permitting reform that makes it easier to build the infrastructure our country needs for cleaner, more efficient, and affordable domestic energy, efficient permitting processes that can help unlock investment, create jobs, and improve our energy security. I also support market-based policies that ensure American businesses can compete fairly while encouraging innovation and cleaner production. As a member of Citizens Climate Lobby, I believe the Republican conservative conservation tradition championed by Theodore Roosevelt and Richard Nixon, conservation, innovation, and free enterprise are not competing ideas. They are complementary strengths that can help America build a stronger economy while protecting the resources that sustain us. That's the message I was proud to bring to Capitol Hill. This from Rob Johnson of Medina.
Thank you, Larry. Conservatives have no health care plan. The August 7th, Another Voice caught my eye. The author criticized the idea that a new health care delivery system that would that could provide good and affordable health care for all Americans. She offered no alternative ideas, just criticism. The author works for the Pacific Research Institute. Being curious, I learned that the Pacific Research Institute is a member of the advisory board of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 plan, now being used as a blueprint to dismantle many government programs that help Americans. More curious, I found nothing in Project 2025 about a comprehensive plan for helping all Americans have good and affordable health care. Why? Now I'm really curious. And this is written by Kirk Freich of Amherst. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Don't delay green energy transition. The August 6th letter, Building Electrification Won't Happen, highlights the challenges New York faces as it transitions to a green energy system from one that has relied on fossil fuels for decades. This is a complex process requiring careful planning, infrastructure improvements, and realistic timelines. However, postponing the transition indefinitely is unacceptable. Delaying the transition indefinitely will create additional long-term costs. Also, heat pump technology has improved significantly. Modern cold climate models do indeed provide efficient heating even in northern states. Retrofitting older homes can be expensive, but New York State offers assistance through the Empower and Comfort Home programs. New York can do more to prioritize such targeted incentives and assistance programs, since these reduce costs for homeowners as they move toward electrification. Another point to remember is that solar and wind generation are not the only routes to electrification. Expanding energy storage, upgrading transmission lines, improving energy efficiency, preserving existing nuclear generation, and exploring new clean energy technologies are all means to achieving a reliable and diverse electrical grid. New York's green transition was slowed by the pandemic inflation bubble. Now it's facing hostility from President Trump's attempt to ramp up fossil fuel production. Governor Kathy Hochul's plan to slow the implementation of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act is also unhelpful. The CLCPA is an evidence-based strategy that balances environmental goals with affordability, reliability, and if we care about our health, our economic stability, and our environment, we must push our legislators to accelerate the green transition, not delay it. This from Lynn Saxton of Warsaw.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:27. Some opinion columns. This one is Another Voice, and it's about legislation. And it's written by Judy Torres, who is Director of Domestic Violence Services at Hispanos Unidos de Buffalo. Domestic violence assessments save lives. Every day, people in Buffalo are abused by someone they once trusted. Since 2020, the number of people reporting domestic assaults and sex offenses in Erie County has risen by over 30%. And in 2024, the number of reported domestic violence-related homicides increased by 46.2% from the previous year. We cannot accept this as the new normal. That's why I urge Governor Kathy Hochul to sign a domestic violence lethality assessment bill before another life is lost. For 36 years, I served as a 911 dispatcher with the Buffalo Police Department. Every domestic violence call required me to quickly assess the situation of someone experiencing fear, trauma, and danger. Today, I serve as Director of Domestic Violence Services at Hispanos Unidos de Buffalo, where we provide essential services like mental health care and affordable housing in our community in English and Spanish. The first call for help may be the only opportunity we have to intervene before violence escalates. Domestic violence lethality assessments are a crucial tool that law enforcement officers can use when responding to a domestic dispute. Participating in the assessment helps victims understand whether they are at high risk of being killed or seriously injured. Research shows that when officers conduct a lethality assessment, survivors are more likely to assess services, adopt safety plans, and escape dangerous situations. Just as important, these assessments help officers recognize dangers that aren't always visible. Domestic violence isn't just physical. It is coercive control, isolation from family and friends, threats, humiliation, and intimidation. Furthermore, it is vital that these assessments are conducted by bilingual officers whenever possible. Many survivors come to HUB because we're one of the only providers of Spanish-language domestic violence services in Buffalo. While lethality assessments can bring clarity to victims in a confusing situation, they won't empower everyone to seek help after their 9/11 call. But when lives are on the line, we have a responsibility to use every evidence-based tool available. This bill is a meaningful step toward preventing tragedies. The sooner it is signed into law, the more lives it will save in New York. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The following column is from Froma Harrop of Creator Syndicate, and it will be edited. It raises an interesting point, and in this reader's view, there is one portion which is a little off topic, which does not add or subtract from the point she is making. Brides embarrassing naked dressing for better or worse. Brides should know that they already have a man. They don't have to use their wedding to attract a date for Saturday night. They supposedly secured one for the foreseeable future. Thus, it's hard to figure how the fashion trend of naked dressing, lamentable even at nightclubs, has invaded the precincts of ancient social custom. Displaying one's privates or underwear in public started as a fashion trend pushed by attention-hungry celebrities. Now it's walking down the aisle. The traditional bridal dress is white for its association with purity, innocence, and, yes, virginity. Okay, things change. Brides still claim the white for its symbolic value, but many push other boundaries that were brick-walled in the past. Strapless dresses are common. Whereas brides traditionally had their arms modestly covered to the wrists, sleeveless has become a norm, and the frontiers of cleavage display are continually being tested. Suffice it to say, brides have the right to dress seductively even at a ceremony crafted to broadcast that she is no longer available. It's their show. If they want to entertain the congregation by letting it see her skimpy panties through sheer fabric, well, I don't have a vote here. There's another possible explanation. One motive for dressing in this revealing manner could be to flatter the groom, to show the guys in the pews what they are missing. It should be clear that I'm limiting this discussion to heterosexual pairings. Same-sex couples have their own rules. Am I being unfair? I don't think so. Judgmental? Definitely. At Studio 54, the late 1970s disco of wild abandon, there actually was a dress code, though it took up only one line. Women could get as naked as they liked. Men, however, were not allowed to take out their members for display, if you get my drift. I know this because my husband, before becoming a plumber, was one of Studio's bartenders. I couldn't enforce this rule, Craig recalls, but I could inform those who did. Craig, as you might imagine, has seen it all, and remains generally non-judgmental on matters of provocative dress by women. Yet he was taken aback last week when walking down a big city dressed in broad daylight, he passed a young woman who had wholeheartedly embraced the naked dressing aesthetic. And the following paragraph is what I am deleting. Well, you're not following because I'm not reading it. Anyway, if you want to hear it, you can call the station at 716-821-5555. Proceeding. Provonia's Barcelona-based bridal fashion house ginned up quite a bit of press when it introduced naked dressing for brides. Of special note was its bridal jumpsuit made of lace with floral appliques strategically placed over the crotch. Bear in mind that Provovios was an internationally luxury bridal brand, not a grubby adult sex shop. It had stores in the high-rent areas of Paris, Beverly Hills, Houston, Miami, London, and New York. Their dresses started at $2,000 and ran to over $10,000. I use past tense because Pronovia's filed for bankruptcy about 6 months ago. We live in contradictory times. Some feminists argue women shouldn't be viewed through the male gaze. Some say women should be free to reveal as much of their beautiful bodies as they choose. And some express both views simultaneously in an unsuccessful attempt to square the circle. How dare you gaze at my naked body? The bride isn't blushing, but the congregants may be. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. ACV Auctions could be considering a takeover. ACV Auctions, a former 43 North winner whose fast-growing online auto auction business turned it into a Buffalo Niagara region's first big startup success, is considering its options after receiving some interest about a possible takeover, reports said Tuesday. Bloomberg reported that ACV has received interest from unidentified suitors and is working with financial advisors to review its options, citing unidentified sources. George Charman, ACV's chief executive officer, declined to discuss potential strategic partnerships when asked by an analyst during a conference call on Monday evening after the company reported a second quarter loss of $8 million. I think talking about strategic partners and things like that on a public call, I don't think this is the right time for that. But no comment on that, Charman said in a conference call with analysts. ACV stock briefly surged on Tuesday morning after the report, but gave back some of those gains and were up by more than 4% by midday. The company has struggled to match the lofty expectations it had when it went public 5 years ago and became the region's first startup to achieve a market value of more than $1 billion, known in investor circles as a unicorn. Its current market value is about $1.3 billion. Bloomberg reported that any potential transaction remains weeks away and noted that the company could decide to remain independent. The options under consideration include a sale of the company or a strategic partnership, the report said. While ACV remains a beacon of hope for Buffalo Niagara's fledgling startup community, it has faced challenges recently. ACV faces competition from companies including OpenLane, Manheim, and ADESA, which runs an in-person auto auction in Akron. Some of its rivals have expanded into online auctions. ACV stock struggled mightily since the initial burst of optimism among investors. Its shares have lost more than 43% of their value over the past year and have fallen to around $7.25 a share, far below its IPO price of $25. Analysts from Barclays downgraded ACV stock after the earnings report, trimming its price target on the shares to $8. Even so, ACV has established itself as an important part of the region's business community. Its successful launch and subsequent growth show that a tech company born in Buffalo could thrive here, in a region where few companies have gone public in recent years. ACV's strong growth spurred hiring and generated wealth for its investors. ACV has about 3,000 employees, including 650 who are based in Western New York. Among its global workforce are about 500 product and technology employees. About 100 of them are based in the region. ACV has been focused on building its online marketplace to buy and sell vehicles. A cost of that expansion has meant the company continues to lose money, even as its revenues have grown steadily. In the second quarter, ACV's revenue grew by 10% to $214 million. Our new field investments are beginning to pay dividends. Timothy Fox, who was named ACV's new CFO on Monday, replacing a departing William Zarella, said during the call, "If we look at the 5 emerging regions where we've leaned in mostly on go-to-market capacity, we delivered mid-teens growth unit in the second quarter. It's starting to really pay off." ACV has also been focused on developing new technology tools to augment its digital auction business. The company sold nearly 830,000 vehicles on its digital platform last year. ACV has begun employing a system called VIPER, V-I-P-E-R, Vehicle Inspection Platform and Enhanced Reporting, which provides an instant, comprehensive assessment of a vehicle's condition. VIPER consists of 2 pillars and a platform installed in a dealership's service area. The system is packed with sensors and cameras. As the vehicle drives through it, the system collects a host of data and images, including from underneath, in mere seconds, and generates a report that includes a dollar estimate of the vehicle's value. We continue to gain market share and expand our dealer partner network to a new record, Shimon said during the conference call. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. More people having trouble keeping up with mortgage debt. Americans, by and large, are not letting their debt get too unwieldy in spite of persistently high inflation and choppy economic developments. New data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York showed Tuesday. However, this is not a one-size-fits-all economy, and the latest data shows growing fractures. More U.S. households are having trouble keeping up with their mortgage payments and other debt. More people went at least 30 days late on their mortgage payments in the second quarter of this year than at any quarter since 2015, according to the New York Fed's latest quarterly report on household debt and credit. A greater share of loans also went into serious delinquency, or 90 days late or more, on their car payments during the same time period than at any quarter since 2010. Still, those delinquency rates remain elevated from where they were pre-pandemic. They're holding fairly stable and not deteriorating to the rates seen during the Great Financial Crisis, New York Fed researchers said. Tuesday's report is the latest piece in a trove of data that highlights the mixed experiences of people are facing the American economy. You really do have a lot of people who are doing just fine and spending because they feel good and they're secure in their jobs, said Matt Schultz, consumer finance analyst for LendingTree. But then you have an awful lot of people who are really struggling and really nervous because of high prices and a challenging job market. Overall, U.S. household debt balances edged down by $13 billion, or 0.1%, to $18.8 trillion during the second quarter. However, the decline is largely an artifact of a quirk in how mortgage loans were recorded during the quarter, researchers noted. Mortgage loan balances' $74 billion decline during the quarter was attributed to a servicer transfer gap of delayed credit reporting when a mortgage is transferred from one servicer to another. This is likely to be reversed next quarter, New York Fed researchers said. If it wasn't for those gaps, mortgage balances would have remained flat for the quarter, which would have resulted in overall debt balances increasing by $61 billion, or 0.3%. Outside of mortgages, most balances increased across the major credit categories of home equity, student, auto, credit card, and personal. Higher debt balances, even record high ones, are to be expected. For one, the New York Fed data is not adjusted for inflation, and we've seen faster than normal price hikes for 5 years running. But those balances can increase because of factors such as population growth, e-commerce activity, economic conditions, and help power consuming spending.
Thank you, Larry. Tariffs threaten expansion of solar power. President Trump's latest move to shun foreign solar power equipment is part of his effort to rebuild U.S. manufacturing clout. It may simultaneously exacerbate the fast widening green technology split between the U.S. and the rest of the world. Trump announced a plan to impose tariffs and minimum prices on imported polysilicon used in semiconductors and solar panels. The levy comes a week after the Federal Communications Commission tightened curbs on inverters, another vital component of solar-powered energy. Such protections can encourage the growth of domestic manufacturing, but as multiple economies have found over the decades, restrictions often come with a financial and technological cost. In the near term, curbs will drive up the price of solar panels in the U.S., a country that already pays more than double the global level thanks to years of tariffs on imports, and where Trump has pursued an renewables policy during his second term. If domestic manufacturing doesn't establish a foothold quickly, it could put the U.S. further behind in technological and power terms as the rest of the world presses ahead with cheap Chinese alternatives. The U.S. is limiting this source of energy when the country so desperately needs more electricity to scale up high-tech and AI, said Li Shuo, director of the China Climate Hub at the Asia Society Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. It looks so different from solar markets you'll see anywhere else in the world. Trump's directive, which takes effect December 4th, subjects derivatives, including silicon wafers, photovoltaic cells, and solar nodules, to 15% tariffs and sets minimum price floors for each product that are higher than current costs in the U.S. For example, the new minimum price for imported solar modules will be 38 cents per watt. This compares with 27 cents per watt for modules shipped to the U.S., currently being shipped to the U.S., according to Bloomberg NEF, while the global average is 11 cents. Trump, who has pushed the revival of the U.S. industry since his first term in office, is also offering a carrot, however. If companies commit to starting construction on U.S. factories to build the solar products by January 20th, 2029, they can avoid the higher costs. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Business Briefly. Natural gas supplies likely to hit 10-year high this fall. U.S. natural gas inventories are set to rise to a decade high of around 4 trillion cubic feet in October, the highest buffer the country has had ahead of a peak winter heating season since 2016, the Energy Information Administration said on Tuesday. Higher natural gas output and reduced consumption by liquefied natural gas facilities undergoing maintenance will contribute to higher inventories, the EIA said. Natural gas in inventories in the fall season provides a cushion for increased heating-related consumption during the winter, EIA Administrator Tristan Abbey said. 3 former UAW presidents endorse Fein challengers. Former United Auto Workers presidents Ray Carey, Rory Gamble, and Ron Gettelfinger on Monday publicly threw their support behind several candidates challenging current President Shawn Fain on his leadership slate in the Detroit Union's upcoming election. The 3 former presidents endorsed Tricia Geiger for president, Margaret Mock for secretary-treasurer, and Keisha Richardson, Matt Slade, and Tony Toddy for the union's 3 vice president positions, while currently issuing several critiques of the current administration. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. And it is a short list today, folks. Flynn, Thomas, Kiss, Laszlo, Miller, Russell, Piccolo, Michael J., Rippey, Catherine. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars by Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Wednesday, August 12, 2026. You are sensible, well-meaning, and responsible. You are also independent-minded and seek to benefit humankind. Socialize and enjoy your world this year. Your desire for life is at a pinnacle. Nurture the happiness and beauty you have within. Let your guard down and loosen up a bit. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. This is the perfect time to hatch some new ideas and plans, perhaps related to vacations, your kids, or an artistic project that appeals to you. Tonight, socialize with others. Taurus, 3 stars. This year you can improve your home or move to a better home. Likewise, you can improve your family relations. Tonight, relax and enjoy yourself. Gemini, 4 stars. Today's solar eclipse might prompt you to make a radical decision that will push you in a new direction that broadens your world. Tonight, a discussion. Cancer. 3 stars. The new moon today is a dazzling new solar eclipse, which could trigger a new way of thinking for you about how you want to handle your money. Tonight, check your belongings. Leo. 4 stars. Today, a dazzling solar eclipse takes place in your sign. This will give you the impetus to make a sudden decision that ultimately brings more security or stability to your world. Tonight, you're strong. Virgo, 3 stars. Because today's solar eclipse is taking place in a hidden part of your chart, it could make you excited and restless in a vague way. Tonight, do some thinking. Libra, 4 stars. You're a social sign, and today the solar eclipse is making you entertain some radical ideas about your relationships. Tonight, friendships. Scorpio, 3 stars. Today is the classic day to explore some ideas that affect your life path in the future. They might even be radical. Tonight, you're admired. Tell that to my wife. Sagittarius, 4 stars. You are the traveler of the zodiac. Today's solar eclipse will encourage you to do something unusual, even radical. Tonight, learn and explore. Capricorn. This is an interesting day because the solar eclipse might prompt you to think about a new approach to shared property. Tonight, check your finances. Aquarius. Today, the solar eclipse is taking place directly opposite your sign. Which will encourage you to think of a radically new approach to your closest relationships. Tonight, genuinely listen to someone. Pisces, 3 stars. This is the perfect day to entertain new ideas related to your job, your health, or your pet, because you might make a sudden decision. Tonight, get something done.
Thank
Linda?
thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise, protecting the ears. Dear Heloise, as I've gotten older, I've become more concerned about preserving my hearing. The only loud noise in my life is my blow dryer, so when I need to use it, I pop in a couple of foam earplugs to help block out the noise. And that's from Jeanette. Jeanette, you're smart to use earplugs to protect your hearing. Many of us are damaging our ears with loud noises at work or at concerts, or by wearing various devices in or on our ears. The damage may not show up right away, but it'll show up in time. That was from Heloise. Hidden treasure. Dear Heloise, I was reading about the treasure hunts while emptying out deceased parents' homes. My mother told my sister to be careful when throwing away old medicine bottles. She'd put her wedding ring, engagement ring, and other expensive rings in a medicine bottle. My sister told me this after I'd already shaken and tossed out many prescription bottles. I was in a real panic. A few hours later, my sister found the rings in a cough drop can. Our elderly family members may stash expensive jewelry, money, and important documents in just about any container imaginable. Be careful when it's your turn to clean up and out. From Paula. Paula, this is good warning to examine the things we throw away. My grandmother used to place $20 bills between the pages of old magazines. It was a holdover from the time of the Great Depression. Unused dinnerware. Dear Heloise, I have a question that many of your readers may have an interest in. What can I do with a full set of china dinnerware? It's not an antique set, circa 1970, but it's in excellent condition as it's only been used a few times. No pieces have been broken. I have no interest in making money on this, but would like to rehome it. Any guidance you can give me will be appreciated. From Deborah. Deborah, have you tried Habitat for Humanity, or perhaps offering it to a church for a family who needs items for their home? You might call a fire station and see if they can recommend anyone who has lost their home and needs items like dinnerware. Readers, do any of you have any good suggestions for rarely used china sets? Let us know at Heloise@Heloise.com. A snow removal hint. Dear Heloise, not sure if any other seniors out there have trouble lifting a snow shovel. I'm always trying to help my husband with snow removal somehow. So I picked up a child-sized orange snow shovel so that I can shovel the steps in the landing area. The shovel isn't heavy and worked so well. And that's from Jill. And this tip from me, Linda. I also have a child-sized orange snow shovel, which I keep in the car, especially in the wintertime. Slip rings on easily. Dear Heloise, when I mentioned to a jeweler how much trouble I had getting rings over my arthritic knuckles, he told me to spray my fingers with Windex first. It's amazing how well this works. Now my rings just slip off and on easily. From Joan. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trump eases rules for reporting to Treasury. The Trump administration finalized a rule Tuesday exempting U.S. companies and individuals from reporting beneficial ownership information to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Unit, rolling back reporting requirements established under a 2021 law aimed at combating illicit finance. The Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, will still require foreign reporting companies to disclose beneficial ownership information for foreign individuals, and the department said in a statement. Treasury is eliminating a burdensome reporting requirement for millions of law-abiding business owners without compromising our national security, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a statement. And FDA gives guidance on fresh produce handling. The Food and Drug Administration finalized guidance Tuesday for preparation of packaging of fresh-cut produce, recommending measures such as sanitation control and refrigeration to reduce the risk of foodborne illnesses. The guidance for ready-to-eat produce comes as ongoing outbreaks of cycloporiasis and salmonella due to contaminated lettuce and jalapenos have sickened thousands of people in the United States. The cyclosporiasis outbreak, one of the largest foodborne illnesses events in recent U.S. history and linked to iceberg lettuce from Taylor Farms, spread to 15 states and hit Michigan the hardest. And regarding energy, the U.S. power consumption hit its second straight annual record high in 2025, will rise more in 2026 and 2027, driven by data centers and electrification, the Energy Information Administration said Tuesday in its short-term energy outlook, STEO. The EIA projected that power demand will rise from a record 4,195 billion kilowatt hours. Boy, that's a huge number. It's like a large number of a large number of a large number. What the heck? You can't even comprehend that. And it will increase in 2025 from 4,195 blah, 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 to 4,268. Again, that's billion kilowatt in 2026. And 4,391 billion kilowatt hours in 2027. And if you can comprehend that, you're a better person than I am. It's just way bigger than anyone. Linda, continue.
Yes, okay. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, August 12th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beanon.
Some local and regional news. Will East administrator back after DWI arrest. A Williamsville East High School administrator who had been on leave of absence since her February arrest for aggravated driving while intoxicated is returning to her school duties. Williamsville Superintendent Darren Brown Hall recently informed the Williamsville East community that Melissa Spada would be back this fall at the school where she served as athletic director and assistant principal. Building trust is a collaborative process that happens over time. Ms. Spada is committed to taking the necessary steps to further cultivate positive relationships within the school and community, Brown Hall said in a message which was obtained by the Buffalo News. The Williamsville School Board is set to vote Tuesday evening to permit Spada's return from her 6-month paid leave of absence effective Monday. The school board also is set to vote to extend Spada's probationary term as an administrator from its prior end date of March 2028 to a new end date in March 2029. The district will work closely with the East administrative team for a seamless transition, understanding that building trust is a collaborative process that happens over time. Ms. Spada is committed to taking the necessary steps to further cultivate positive relationships within the school and community, Nick Filipowski said. A Williamsville Central School District spokesperson said in an email Tuesday morning. Spada, 34, was placed on paid leave on February 9th, one day after the Niagara County Sheriff's Office said she crashed her Honda CR-V SUV into a detached garage on Lockport Road in Wheatfield. She was charged with aggravated DWI after she registered a blood alcohol level of 0.21%, more than 2.5 times the legal threshold for intoxication in a breath test, according to the Sheriff's Office. Following a June bench trial in Wheatfield Town Court, Spada was found guilty of common law DWI, a violation of traffic law, but she was acquitted of aggravated DWI. She was sentenced to a 1-year conditional discharge, 1 year of having an ignition interlock installed on her vehicle, a 6-month revocation of her driver's license, and a $500 fine, the Niagara County District Attorney's Office reported in July. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Prosecutors reveal audio recordings in abuse case. Erie County prosecutors revealed in court Tuesday they have an audio recording of the final incident of abuse of a 7-year-old boy whose parents are accused of waterboarding and attempting to drown their son in a bathtub. Prosecutors also told a judge they plan to introduce at trial 64 recordings of jailhouse phone calls involving the parents and 2 other people in which they make allegedly incriminating statements. Jacqueline J. Belabé, 26, of Paris, and Paris D. Woods, 25, faced 14 felony charges of suspected abuse of the boy between October 16, 2025 and December 11, 2025, the night police and firefighters responded to their Parkdale Avenue apartment. That abuse included 7 instances of attempted drownings, 3 of which also included the boy being waterboarded, a law enforcement source previously told the Buffalo News. The parties appeared in court Tuesday to get State Supreme Court Justice Kelly Vaco's decision on what evidence may be barred from use at Belabé's and Woods' trial scheduled for October. Firefighters found the boy unresponsive at the apartment. He suffered 2 cardiac arrests that night. Doctors thought the boy would die from his injuries, but he survived and now 8 is in foster care. Doctors told the police they suspect the 7-year-old had been subject to ongoing abuse, including daily beatings and the withholding of food. At the hospital, he had ligature marks on his neck, bruising, and possible cigarette burns on his skin. Waterboards for people for a living. In one of the recorded jail cells, Woods, the boy's stepfather, tells someone that he waterboards people for a living. Assistant District Attorney Stephen Pepia said, Waterboarding is an interrogation technique that uses water poured over the face to simulate drowning. It is widely viewed as a form of torture. There's another call in which Bella Bays, the victim's mother, tells her son, "When we find out where you hid my stuff, it's going to be your expletive life," the prosecutor said in court. On one call, Bella Bays' tells other people what to tell investigators. On another, Woods laughs at a person on the phone who's in state prison, who's complaining he's starving. According to Papia, Woods laughs and then tells him he sounds like his 7-year-old son. In the recording of the incident of abuse on December 11, 2025, the one that nearly killed the boy, Papia said the voices of Woods, Bella Bays, and friends of Bella Bays can be heard yelling at the victim to stop fighting and put his arms down. NACO issued a written decision Tuesday based on suppression hearings held earlier this year. The judge ruled Buffalo police legally seized Bella Bays' cell phone when they took it from her when they drove her December 12th to the interview at police headquarters, even though they didn't have a warrant at the time. Buffalo police have said they didn't search Bella Bays' cell phone until they obtained a warrant to do so in February. Based on the totality of the circumstances, detectives had reasonable cause to believe that call records and photographs of the boy from defendant Bella Bays' cell phone would contain valuable evidentiary data and details, Vaca wrote in her decision. NACO also barred prosecutors from using statements Bella Bays and Woods made to police after they invoked their right to an attorney during their respective police interviews. According to the decision, Bella Bays said police, "I'm telling you the truth. I didn't put my hands on him. I'm telling you, and it is what it is. You can just get me a lawyer because I'm telling you, yeah, I did put him in a cold shower. I know I'm not supposed to do that. No, that's not okay." Even though Bella Bays invoked her right to an attorney, she continued talking without further prompting from investigators, according to the judge, who ruled what Bella Bays said in the statement that ended, "That's not okay," after which she paused for 10 seconds, would be admissible. Statements made by Woods after he invoked his right to counsel, including telling police that he was not in the bathroom where the abuse occurred and his stepson didn't want to be in the water, will not be admissible at trial. Timothy Gallagher, Woods' defense attorney, and Tom Oybush, Bella Bays' defense attorney, both declined to comment after Tuesday's court appearance. The auto recording of the December 11th incident comes from a recorded phone call between Tyree Fomby, a man in state prison, and someone who was in the apartment at the time, according to prosecutors. That call happened 29 minutes before the boy's family called 911, Papia said. Fomby went to prison in 2024 and is serving a sentence of up to 7 years for convictions of robbery and attempted weapons possession, according to State Department of Corrections and Community Supervisions. Cassandra Bauman, Bella Bays' friend, admitted in court in July she participated in the December 11th incident. Bauman, 21, had been charged with 2 felonies and pleaded guilty to a felony count of first-degree reckless endangerment. Bauman faces a maximum of 2 1/3 to 7 years in prison when she is scheduled for sentencing on November 17th. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. WKBW's TV revival is just a pipe dream. After the EW Scripps Company purchased WKBW TV, Channel 7, in 2014 and a Detroit station from Granite Broadcasting for $110 million, optimism reigned inside 7 Broadcast Plaza about a news department comeback. After all, anything had to be better than being run by a company controlled by a hedge fund like Granite. And what did the ABC affiliate have to lose since it was deep in 3rd place in local news ratings? They were extremely excited to be purchasing this station. Michael Nurse, the general manager in 2014, said of Scripps, "The Buffalo market fits perfectly with their strategy of targeting turnaround markets, especially along the Great Lakes." 2 staffers who declined to be identified at the time said they thought the Scripps purchase would be good news. Scripps is one of the top broadcast companies in the country. said one staffer. If it is true, hallelujah, said yet another staffer. New equipment is arriving like Christmas morning, added Nurse. There is a real effort to increase our efforts to do live. The comeback never happened. Channel 7 never found a successful 4 p.m. show to serve as lead-in to the 5 p.m. newscast, which didn't start 4 p.m. or morning weekend newscasts as its rivals did, and remains in third place locally throughout Scripps ownership. During the May sweeps period, the 6 p.m. newscast averaged a 3.0 Nielsen rating on Channel 7 and was the only one to get above a 1.8 Nielsen. A rating point in Western New York represents 6,370 households. The numbers are higher in the rating service ComScore, but that's the case for all local stations, and Channel 7s are still low compared with rival broadcast rivals, WIVB TV Channel 4 and WGRZ TV Channel 2. And now Scripps appears to be waving the white flag in the broadcast channel competition. The Scripps nationwide reorganization that led to the loss of 268 jobs by relying on AI and other technology to produce the news and emphasizing streaming news 24/7 may lead to an even further decline in the already low viewership on the broadcast channel in Buffalo. It is a big bet on the future. It may also be premature. It relies on older viewers who watch news at the highest levels, heading to streaming to catch the news as it happens, rather than watch it the traditional way on scheduled newscasts. Members of the late legendary Channel 7 anchor team of Irv Weinstein, Rick Azar, and Tom Jules must be rolling over in their graves about the state of the station in these changing times. When Channel 7's Eyewitness News was dominant under the ownership of Capital Cities, General Manager Phil Booth relied on people, personality, and promotion. The new Scripps way of doing things de-emphasizes the first two of those qualities and makes it harder to do the third. Channel 7 station manager Leanne Markins has declined to return emails about the station's plans after laying off 8 staffers last week, and the station employees have been sworn to secrecy. But the clues about the way Channel 7 plans to implement its scheduled newscasts suggest that it will be further downplaying its anchors, who are the main personalities at any station. The departure of co-anchor Leah Lando more than a year ago was the first big sign of downplaying anchors. It led to Jeff Russo anchoring solo. It doesn't look like the station will replace outgoing morning co-anchor Katie Morse, 11 p.m. anchor Fleben Casson, or sports reporter anchor Dom Tibbetts after they leave this month. Tibbetts is heading for a job at a Phoenix station. If Scripps is serious about expanding its local news coverage, it would use the money it is saving by cutting people who can be replaced by AI to add reporters. I noted during my week of watching Channel 7 News that often the weather and sports are recorded, giving a newscast an antiseptic quality. There is little attempt at showing the so-called anchor team members enjoying each other's company, which has been a staple of successful TV news programs. This is especially true of morning programs. Channel 7's 3-person weather team remains, but you wonder if it will be long before Scripps decides to eliminate some local meteorologists and do weather from an out-of-town hub. I don't know how Scripps is going to promote its new broadcast model or highlight the personalities of the few anchors it has left at the station. It will take years to see if Scripps' reinvention of how news is presented will be successful. But one thing is clear, the Hallelujah Chorus of 2014, when Scripps took over Channel 7, has turned into a very sad song. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Save the Michaels sues founder, claims he stole $1 million from group. Save the Michaels of the World Incorporated is suing its founder and former CEO, Avi Israel, claiming that he used the addiction services provider as his own piggy bank and stole donated funds, grant funds, and public funds to the tune of over $1 million. The lawsuit, filed this month in State Supreme Court in Erie County, is the latest development in the final chapter of the embattled organization. In a statement from his attorney, Israel denied the lawsuit's claims. Save the Michaels was founded in 2011 to raise awareness of the dangers of opioids following the suicide of 20-year-old Michael David Israel, the son of Avi and Julie Israel. The organization went on to provide chemical dependency services, non-medical transportation, and residential reintegration programs to thousands of Western New Yorkers. It wound down operations this year after state and county agencies withdrew funding over concerns about its financial management. The blame for the organization's downfall, the lawsuit states, belongs to Israel, who wielded unparalleled influence over the organization and for a number of years held every seat of authority at Save the Michaels. As a result of his greed and avarice, defendant single-handedly placed his son's legacy in peril, Save the Michaels attorney wrote in the lawsuit filed August 4th. Founders sued Group First. In April, Avi and Julie Israel sued Save the Michaels for $675,000 for a reported breach of employment contract and other funds they claim they are owed. In the more than 14 years they were involved at Save the Michaels, the Israels loaned various sums of money to the nonprofit and have been guarantors on many Save the Michaels credit cards and debts in excess of $300,000, according to their lawsuit filed in April. Save the Michaels has filed a motion in court to dismiss that lawsuit. Attorney Michael McGorry, who is representing the Israels, said Avi Israel's position on Save the Michaels' recent lawsuit against him is that it is just retribution for him suing Save the Michaels, or STM. We have proof that any loans that were taken out with board approval, McGrory wrote in an email Tuesday. In addition, we have been trying for months to get his name off the credit cards associated with STM. His credit is being ruined based upon the fact that he was the guarantor on a number of STM debts. He never stole a penny from STM. No one above him. For more than 5 years, the lawsuit claims Israel served as founder, president, CEO, and also presided over the board of directors of Save the Michaels. There was no one above him, and by design, no one to whom he was accountable for his actions, the lawsuit states. Israel, the lawsuit claims, took out undocumented loans on behalf of the organization without board approval and would grant himself a salary increase from time to time without prior notice or to approval from the board. In 2023, the State Office of Addiction Services and Supports, OASAS, advised Israel that he could not serve as both board president and CEO, according to the suit. While Israel stepped down as board president, he was appointed as a non-voting board member, and his control over the organization's operation, finances, and information continued, the lawsuit states. A state audit finalized in 2024 detailed claims of fiscal mismanagement at Save the Michaels. Among the audit's findings, advances totaling nearly $40,000 were made from the organization to Israel in 2021 and 22 without prior board approval. Prior board requirements were not being followed for out-of-state travel, and the board approved $25,000 raised for Israel in January 24 without OASAS regional office support or approval as required for OASAS-funded providers. After OASAS warned at a meeting last November that it would withhold funding if Save the Michaels did not fall in line, Israel resigned as CEO as of January 1st, and Jessica Goff, who joined Save the Michaels in 2019, was elevated into the role of CEO. Meanwhile, the lawsuit claims Israel created a position for himself as founder and special consultant, which allowed him to maintain control over the organization and its finances despite no longer holding an executive title. It wasn't until January 21st that a new CEO, Goff, was given signing ability and access to all bank accounts. In February, OASAS told Goff that Israel's new position as special consultant would not be acceptable, according to the lawsuit. By March, the organization was struggling to make payroll and meet operating expenses, and Israel resigned from his special consultant position on March 9th due to payroll constraint, the lawsuit said. Once Israel lost his control over Save the Michaels, the board was able to discover the full amount of his years of misconduct, according to the lawsuit. As this was ongoing in an organization that had 90 employees in 2025 had declined to just 16 workers, and funding was coming to an end. Save the Michaels location in Lockport closed by early March, and OASAS discontinued 2 multi-year contracts worth more than $5 million on March 29th. OASAS had informed Goff of the impending discontinuance of funding for Save the Michaels on February 27th, according to the documents obtained by the Buffalo News through a public records request. In early April, Save the Michaels filed an application with the state to transfer ownership of its Newfane House of Hope, a 12-bed male residential reintegration program, to Recovery Center of Niagara. That application remains under review, according to the state's database. In an April 6 email to OASAS, Upstate Regional Director Goff attached closeout documents for 4 organization programs: case management, family support navigator service, non-medical transportation, recovery community outreach center. Those documents signed by Goff and board president George Mazaris were required to be filed related to the discontinuance of OASAS funding. At this time, I am still attempting to find the inventory list for each location, Goff wrote to OASAS on April 6. Unfortunately, the previous CEO would have been responsible for this, and I am unsure where he stored the data or if it was collected. Save the Michaels lawsuit against Israel claims 8 causes of action, including breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, and waste of corporate assets. Ultimately, defendant single-handedly caused the closure of several life-saving and one-of-a-kind programs that many members of our community so desperately need, the lawsuit states. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:21. On to sports. Sure, it's here, folks. This is a commentary by Jay Skursky on the Buffalo Bills. Coleman, Palmer are in a tight number 3 receiver race. Keon Coleman is in the dark about how much he'll play Saturday in the Buffalo Bills preseason opener against the Carolina Panthers at Highmark Stadium. If the third-year receiver gets his way, though, he'll be on the field. It's football, so any chance I can get to go out there and play, I'm going to go out there and maximize the time I'm given, Coleman said Tuesday after practice. Coleman made a strong catch on a throw from quarterback Josh Allen early during 11-on-11 work Tuesday, gaining separation from rookie cornerback David Ingebrigtsen on an out route. Coleman has been steady throughout training camp to this point. Pretty consistent on my end as far as the effort, making plays, being where I need to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing on the field, he said. It's pretty much been good. If the season started tomorrow, Coleman likely would be the Bills' number 4 receiver behind DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, and Joshua Palmer. The addition of Moore and Palmer, looking healthy, has made for a competitive room. There's only one ball, so when the ball finds you, make the play, because if you don't, the next person is going to make the play, Coleman said. It's just how the room operates. That's the friendly competition. We want to make as many plays in that receiver room as we can. It's great for the team. During the offseason, Bills head coach Joe Brady made a rather definitive statement when he said taking over in his new role after serving as the team's offensive coordinator would be the best thing that could happen for Coleman's career. The receiver was asked Tuesday whether he agreed with that. I wholeheartedly believe that, Coleman said. In order for it to work, you have to buy in. You have to agree with what he's seeing and make sure you're seeing the same things. Attendance. The Bills were without 8 players at Tuesday's practice. Center Connor McGovern, running back Ty Johnson, wide receiver Skylar Bell, safeties Cole Bishop and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, cornerbacks Maxwell Harrison and Kenai Walker, and wide receiver Jamore Macklin. The team has not revealed the nature or severity of any potential injuries, assuming that is the reason for the absences. Punter Mitch Wisnowski, rookie defensive tackle Zane Durant, and defensive back DJ Miller were back at practice after sitting out Monday. Highlights. Joshua Palmer continued a strong camp, getting behind rookie cornerback Toriano Pry Jr. for a long touchdown pass from Allen. I'm just happy for him. Pray he can continue to be healthy throughout the season so everybody can see what he's capable of doing, Coleman said of Joshua Palmer, who later stretched to make a nice competition in front of safety Damar Hamlin on another play. Tight end Dalton Kincaid caught an Allen touchdown that came on a pinpoint pass to the left side of the end zone. Nickel cornerback D. Alford had a defensive play of the day, intercepting Allen along the right sideline on a throw intended for Coleman. It was gotta have it for offense. They need it. No timeouts. So I'm thinking, as a defensive back, outside leverage, any type of outbreaking route, I'm going to be aggressive, Alford said. He's the best quarterback in the league, MVP. Anytime you can catch an interception off of him, man, it just shows what kind of defender you are. Kicker Tyler Bass continued to show plenty of leg, attempting 5 field goals that ranged from 33 to 44 yards during the special teams portion of the practice. Moore, who has been a camp standout, had his first miscue with a drop pass on a crossing route. With Johnson out, third-year running back Ray Davis had a couple strong runs with the starters. And up next, the Bills will take Wednesday off. They return to the practice field at 8:30 a.m. Thursday. Brady will speak to the media at 8 a.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Bills Hamlin is happy to fly under the radar at camp. Damar Hamlin leans on the Buffalo Bills pass as he prepares for the future. The longest tenured Bills defensive back, Hamlin learned from non-veterans in his early days. He now finds himself the veteran in the room. Man, it's a blessing, Hamlin said Monday. It's an honor, honestly. It's something that from day one I got in here that I wanted to be able to do. Just watching the guys that were in front of me uphold the standard. So I always leaned back into what was, but I love being able to be the bridge between what was and what is now. So it's been an honor upholding the standard of, what got us where we are right now. And to be able to add to it, where we're trying to go. What is now is new because defense, a new head coach, and a new cast in the Bills secretary. At the start of training camp, Hamlin's role as he returned from missing most of last season with a pectoral injury was a little more than low-key. But injuries to safeties Cole Bishop and C.J. Gardner-Johnson have given the 6-year veteran Hamlin more reps with the starters. He had embraced those opportunities, but he was fine with the quieter start to his camp. I like it like that, Hamlin said, being able to just play under the radar and just work. I've always just wanted to prioritize the work. That's what I love to focus on. So to be able to avoid distractions, just be able to be in my process under the radar working, I think it's going to work well for me. Hamlin knows that the spotlight, what the spotlight can be like. Previous training camps brought his recovery into full attention, even though he said he would prefer to work behind the scenes, and his process behind the scenes is now benefiting him under the lights. During Saturday's practice at Highmark Stadium, Hamlin intercepted quarterback Josh Allen on a bobbled pass. Nickel cornerback D. Alford, new to the Bills this season, sees plays like that as the inevitable result of Hamlin's work. He's just an all-around pro, Alford said. He's a very great communicator. I don't think you all just know the type of communication we have to go through on defense. And Damar, one of them guys, if you see something, he'll let you know. He'll help you get lined up, relay the calls, and different things like that. He's an ultimate pro, man. When I first got in the building, he was one of those guys I just seen consistently working, perfecting his craft. So shout out to Damar. Bills defensive coordinator Jim Leonard said there's no weak link in the safety room, as the group has been forced to rotate players in different combinations due to injuries throughout the spring and summer. Leonard is proud of the communication of the group as a whole, and in Hamlin he also sees the undercover work. He's an awesome professional, habits, Leonard said of Hamlin. He is locked in. He's urgent in everything he does. He plays with a lot of consistency. He understands what he can and can't do. But Leonard knows there's room to keep growing. The next step is like, let's go impact the game. Let's take the ball away. So it's happening that it's a challenge for everybody within the scheme. when you do get to the point, I just got to be right versus I like letting it go. Hamlin quipped that now that he's nabbed his first interception in a new stadium, he wants one every time he steps foot inside Highmark. The Bills are always looking for more takeaways. Man, I'm just focused on making a team right now, Hamlin said. While the schematic changes to the defense have a bigger effect relatively on the front, Hamlin and the secondary are still seeing tweaks as well. I always love embracing new challenges, Hamlin said. I love having expectations on me. So to be able to have the expectation is to learn a defense quickly and to be able to execute. It means a lot.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:30. On to Asking Eric. Casual friend's fish allergy creates drama at dinner. Dear Eric, about once a month a group of us from church go out to dinner. At our last dinner, I was sitting next to a woman I know casually. The day after this dinner, the woman complained to the person who organized the event that she had to go to the ER because of a reaction to what I ordered. Seems she is allergic to fish, which she knew, but I did not. Here's the amusing part. I did not have fish. Although I am sympathetic to her plight, I just laughed this off. If we go out again with a group that includes this woman, would it be rude to insist she not sit next to me? From Fishy Story. Dear Story, an ER visit is no laughing matter, so I'd choose another route. It's possible that there were fish oil or fish derivatives in something you or someone else at the dinner ate. Caesar dressing, puttanesca, Worcestershire sauce, bouillabaisse, or other food with fewer vowels. Cross-contamination in the kitchen is also possible. You didn't know that there was a risk, and seemingly she didn't think there was, so there's no fault here. But next time you dine out, it might be useful, instead of insisting that she sit elsewhere, to ask if she needs any accommodations. If her allergy is so sensitive that she can't sit near a triggering food item, then there's probably a larger issue, and it would benefit everyone to get clarity. It's not your responsibility to manage her allergy. However, since this is a social group that meets regularly, expressing your concern and asking how, if at all, you can help is a simple and hospitable gesture that would likely contribute to the overall well-being of the group as well as the well-being of this one member. Dear Eric, I have a niece and nephew, both now in their 30s. My middle sister and I have always had to ask if they received their presents. We have sent them for their birthdays, holidays, graduations, etc. This has been a topic that my sister and I have discussed with them many times over the years. When I became a great uncle, I sent my grandniece presents for her birthday and the holidays, and the pattern continued with me having to ask if the present was received. This past year, I had to ask again my niece if my grandniece, who is now 10 years old, received the present, and ended up having a fight with her, and she wrote me a nasty text. I have decided to no longer send gifts. Also, I was extremely ill 2 years ago and was knocking on heaven's door. During that time, I never received a phone call or text asking how I am. The decision was made to change my beneficiaries and leave what was going to go to them to my niece from another sister who has continued to stay in touch, check in, visit, invite me to her home, and treat me like the family that we are. Am I wrong in cutting out my grandniece and now my grandnephew, born this past year? By the age of 10, a child should have been educated in the words, thank you, from Resources Redistributed. Dear Resources, you're free to leave what you want to anyone for any reason. So the short answer is you're not going to cut out your grandniece and grandnephew if you so choose. While your grandniece didn't write a thank you note for the last present, your conflict isn't really with the children, so add that consideration to your thinking. It's clear that the parents don't have the same values you do around expressing gratitude. Your conflict is really with them. It also seems that gratitude is only part of the problem. The larger issue seems to be the lack of care they're showing for your relationship in general. It sounds like you've had some conversations about it, but it may be helpful to be more direct in talking about how you'd like to be in their lives and seeing if that's what they want too. It's okay to say that it matters to you when relatives show up, check in, communicate, and express care and concern. They may be willing and interested in stepping up, they might not. With inheritance, it's helpful to think about what you intend the money to do. Oftentimes, people will bequeath money or belongings as a symbol of the strength of a relationship. If that's what you'd like to see this money do for your grandniece and grandnephew, it may be helpful to first think about how or if you can build better relationships with them while you're living, and let those efforts and results guide your estate planning going forward. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Fuel sales bring taste of capitalism to Cuban residents. Havana, gasoline at $38 a gallon. That's $38 a gallon sold from cramped apartments. Diesel hawked on Instagram by a celebrity model to a reggaeton soundtrack. 6 decades after Fidel Castro's revolution, all of a sudden, capitalist crack are appearing in Cuba's communist energy sector. Under Washington's crippling oil embargo against Cuba, an exception that allows U.S. firms to export fuel to private Cuban businesses has kick-started a chaotic black market and pried the lid off an energy sector highly controlled by the state ever since Dwight Eisenhower was in office. Oil shipments from Cuba's traditional supplier, Venezuela and Mexico, ended abruptly after the U.S. ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in January. U.S. Coast Guard cutters patrol the waters off Cuba while sanctions and threats have dissuaded tankers from even setting sail. The embargo has hobbled essential state-run services like the healthcare system, public transport, and schools. But under the Commerce Department exception, a trickle of gasoline and diesel is reaching a private restaurants, retailers, and taxis, the first significant landings of U.S. fuel on the the Caribbean islands since Castro nationalized refineries after the 1959 revolution. Reuters could not determine which U.S. companies are shipping fuel to Cuba, but there is no sign major oil traders are involved. Some is resold on the black market, allowing those who can afford it to keep gas in their tank and in home generators, blunting the impact of a collapse in public transport, the rolling blackouts, and, by powering home pumps, the country's faltering water distribution system. While providing some relief, the new system is sharpening wealth disparities. On a recent July afternoon in Havana, Amaryllis Sanchez, 53, waited for hours at a bus stop. She'd come to celebrate her daughter's birthday, but now had little faith that the bus to return home, which normally cost 2 pesos, would ever arrive. Across the street, dozens of taxi drivers leaned against antique cars. Ismael Coutinho, one of the drivers, said he could take Sanchez, but the trip would cost 1,000 pesos. He explained 500 times as much as the bus, because of the black market price of gasoline and diesel, which many Cuban vehicles run on. For Sanchez, who does not have a paid job, that was far out of reach. She said her plan was to sit there until it grew dark, and if the bus never arrived, sleep at her daughter's house and wait for the bus again the next day. While only enough to fulfill the country's energy needs for about 90 days, the 900,000 barrels of U.S. fuel imported from February to May have opened the door to big changes. Reuters reporters found during visits to black market distributing sites and legal wholesalers, and in conversations with business owners, economists, diplomats, and sanctions experts. When the national grid collapsed shortly before 11 p.m. one Sunday evening this month, Havana was plunged into darkness, but a few restaurants and shops were lit up thanks to generators running on imported fuel. A thriving resale market has bloomed in plain sight. On another day, at a convenience store in central Havana stocked with soda, beer, and crackers, customers shot pool on a table in the entryway. In the large back room, the shopkeeper stores another product, a dozen 20-liter tanks of gasoline, which she retails at $5 a liter, or $19 a gallon. Inside a nearby tenement building, a man who advertises gasoline on Facebook hoards it in his small apartment, despite the risks of fire, explosions, and toxic fumes. WhatsApp groups of dedicated and illegal fuel cells have proliferated. Black market prices peaked at an eye-watering $10 a liter, $38 a gallon this spring, before easing as the volume of imports grew. Seeking to avoid paralysis from the oil blockade, the government authorized private businesses to import fuel for their own use for the first time in February. In June, Cuban lawmakers approved a sweeping package of economic reforms that would open up the energy sector to private and foreign investors. While this package hasn't been implemented in full, by late July, nearly 200 Cuban businesses had received permission to carry out wholesale fuel distribution to other private companies. In a viral social media advertisement for one such company, a model known as the ex-girlfriend of a famous Cuban reggaeton artist struts through a warehouse filled with industrial bulk containers of diesel as Daddy Yanker's hit song Gasolina plays in the background. A spokesperson for the company behind the ad, a Granel, said it only sells to other registered private businesses. It charges $2.50 a liter for about 940-liter tanks. Even more significantly, Cuba has approved the first foreign investment in venture dedicated to importing and selling fuel on the island. Prime Minister Manuel Moraro Cruz said in late July. He did not identify the company involved. Cuban law restricts companies from reselling imported fuel without explicit authorization. Despite the reforms, which indicate private businesses may soon be able to run some of the state's distinctive red and green Cubbit gas stations, Cuba has so far not approved any retail sales. Some state-operated gas stations now store U.S. fuel that they can disperse only to vehicles registered to specific private businesses, said O'Neill Diaz, founder of Havana-based consulting company Auge. Cuban authorities did not respond to requests for comment. On July 29th, President Miguel Diaz-Canel denounced what he called Washington's genocidal siege of the island. Economic reforms were not undertaken to please the United States, he said, vowing no massive privatization of national assets. In response to Reuters' questions, the State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott said Washington recognized the significant humanitarian needs of Cubans while accusing Cuban officials of incompetence and diverting resources without providing evidence. He said private businesses, NGOs, and diplomatic missions can and do import fuel, mostly from the United States, but did not answer questions about the impact of U.S. policy on Cuba's black market and high prices. With the average government salary only about $10 a month, 6,700 pesos, importing fuel is out of reach for the vast majority of the island's 9 million residents. Fuel sold openly on the black market is in violation of Cuban law and poses a compliance risk under U.S. export rules, which stipulate that the fuel must be for private sector use and cannot end up in the hands of the Cuban government. It looks very good on paper, but there's no monitoring of whether people follow through with the restrictions, said Jorge Pinon, a former oil executive with Cuban energy expert who works for the University of Texas at Austin. Reuters was unable to determine how much U.S. fuel reaches the black market, nor did the news agency find evidence that it ended up in the hands of Cuban officials or sanctioned government entities. Other countries, including Mexico and Panama, also have exported small quantities to Cuba's private sector in recent months, Diaz said. Currently, U.S. fuel destined for private buyers must pass through the state-owned port and storage tanks controlled by U.S.-sanctioned entities. Private Cuban companies signed service agreements with these entities for the use of state infrastructure with a payment of about 11 cents per liter, according to Diaz. Reuters found no evidence that the fuel is diverted during the process. Still, large U.S. businesses are wary of getting involved in shipping fuel to Cuba, given the complexity of the sanctions, said Jeremy Panner, a former U.S. Treasury Department investigator who now advises companies. Cuba says it will continue to ease restrictions and facilitate private investment, but it's unclear how far the reforms will go. For Mayra Espina, a Cuban socialist who specializes in poverty, the small supplies of expensive U.S. fuel don't begin to make up for the volumes kept away from Cuba by Trump's embargo. It's at least allowed the country to avoid complete paralysis, she said. But for the vast majority of Cubans who rely on public services, it is increasing and further entrenching inequalities.
Thank you, Larry. Rescue mission in peril. Link craft careening amid bid to save prized Swift space telescope. NASA's mission to save a vital space telescope from plummeting back to Earth is in trouble. At the beginning of July, NASA and its commercial partners mounted a highly anticipated rescue mission to prevent the Swift Observatory from falling out of orbit. The operation appeared to be going off without much of a hitch, with the spacecraft meant to boost Swift's altitude, reaching orbit, and establishing communications with Earth. By the end of July, things started to look grim. The spacecraft tasked with reaching the Swift Observatory and clamping onto the telescope encountered mechanical issues that since sent it spinning uncontrollably in space. The U.S. Space Agency appears to be cautiously optimistic that the mission could still be successful as long as time doesn't run out. Here's the latest on the mission. What is SWIFT? Launched in 2004, NASA's Swift Observatory has spent more than 2 decades orbiting Earth while studying cosmic phenomena. The satellite's primary objective is to observe gamma ray bursts, events triggered by the catastrophic deaths of massive stars and considered to be the most powerful types of explosions in the universe. The satellite is equipped with 3 multi-wavelength telescopes that are able to collect data in visible, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma ray light. Why is it falling? The Swift Observatory is in a region of space known as low Earth orbit near the atmosphere, which is also where the International Space Station resides. All spacecraft in that region can expect to fall to lower altitudes if they don't have propulsion systems to counteract atmospheric drag and maintain their orbits. The Swift Observatory fell faster than NASA anticipated because of increased solar storms since the autumn of 2024. Mission teams on the ground kept Swift at least 185 miles above Earth, where NASA's mission to save it has the best chance of success. Why save it? NASA could allow the Swift Observatory to fall back to Earth, where it would harmlessly burn up. Instead, the agency wants to extend the telescope's mission, negating the need to spend more money to replace the observatory, NASA said in a news release. A successful mission would mark the first time a commercial robotic spacecraft captured a government satellite that, unlike other spacecraft such as the Hubble Space Telescope, was never meant to be serviced in space. The venture, NASA leaders say, could test a new capability that could be used on future missions. Initiative launched on July 3rd. A rocket manufactured by Virginia-based aerospace company Northrop Grumman helped launch NASA's rescue operation dubbed the Swift Boost mission. On Northrop Grumman's 55-foot-tall Pegasus XL was a spacecraft tasked with helping to boost the Swift Observatory to a higher orbit. Northrop Grumman deploys an air launch strategy to send the Pegasus to space, taking off from the Marshall Islands in the South Pacific Ocean. The company's Stargazer L-1011 aircraft climbed to about 40,000 feet over the ocean, where it released its Pegasus rocket. The Pegasus XL ignited the first of its 3-stage rocket motors, delivering Link into orbit in about 10 minutes, according to Northrop Grumman. What happened? Trouble soon arose for the 5-foot-tall Link spacecraft developed by Arizona-based Catalyst Space with a $30 million contract from NASA. Powered by 20 feet of solar panels, the 880-pound spacecraft established communications the same day as the launch and sent a signal back to Earth confirming its power systems worked as planned. Once Link reached Earth's orbit, Catalyst was then due to spend weeks evaluating the spacecraft's propulsion, navigation, and sensor systems. The spacecraft was then to slowly approach and survey Swift before grabbing the observatory with its robotic arms and raising the orbit to almost 370 miles high. At the end of July, NASA reported that Link experienced issues that caused the spacecraft to spin out of control. As a result, ground teams received only sporadic communications from the device. What's the fix? The Catalyst ground control team worked to stabilize the Link spacecraft by using electric propulsion thruster burns to reduce how fast it's spinning, NASA said in a July 31st blog post. NASA said Catalyst identified potential paths forward for a boost, with Link potentially approaching the Swift Observatory by the end of this month. Swift has no docking ports or grappling fixtures, so Catalyst built Link with a custom robotic capture mechanism meant to attach to a feature on the satellite's main structure. The process is meant to mitigate the chance of damaging sensitive instruments, Catalyst said in the news release. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. On election 2026, Judge Black's voting rules. President's executive order intended to limit use of mail in ballots. A federal judge blocked the U.S. Postal Service on Tuesday from implementing part of President Donald Trump's executive order that aims to tighten rules for mail-in voting ahead of November elections that will decide control of Congress. The ruling by U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani in Boston marked the latest setback for Trump's push to expand the federal government's role in overseeing elections. Trump, a Republican, signed his executive order in March after years of calling for tighter rules on voting by mail and pushing the false claim that his 2020 election defeat was the result of widespread voter fraud. The executive order called on states to provide lists of eligible voters who may receive mail ballots. If states did not comply, the USPS would have refused to deliver the ballots. Tuesday's decision effectively expanded on an earlier order Talwani issued in June that prevented Trump's administration from implementing it in 23 mostly Democratic-led states. Several voting rights groups asked the judge to go further and bar the USPS from implementing the order anywhere in the nation. In granting the plaintiff's request, Talwani, an appointee of Democratic President Barack Obama, wrote that the executive branch of the federal government has no authority to regulate elections, a responsibility that the U.S. Constitution assigns to individual states. The executive order is presently causing confusion and threatening both increasing chaos and an erosion of trust in our democracy, Talwani wrote. Enfranchisement heavily outweighs the executive's attempt to unconstitutionally insert itself into the domain of election regulation. The Trump administration asked the U.S. Supreme Court to put Talwani's order decision on hold, arguing the state's case was premature, as agencies had not yet finalized plans to implement Trump's order. The top U.S. court, where conservative justices hold a 6-3 majority, has not yet ruled. In a similar case brought by the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., a federal court judge in May declined to immediately block the executive order, finding it would be premature to do so because the USPS has not yet issued its rule. An appeals court affirmed that decision. Talwani said the case was now ripe for a decision because the USPS had proposed a rule and the election was closer. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Officers arrest over 1,200 in ICE operation in Atlanta. More than 1,200 undocumented immigrants were arrested throughout Georgia over the past few weeks as part of what U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials are calling an enhanced immigration enforcement operation. The operation, called Operation Safe Community Atlanta, was intended to net undocumented immigrants who have criminal histories. Charges ranged in severity from drug crimes and DUIs to aggravated assault and crimes against children, according to the agency. Only half of those arrested, however, had any criminal history. Our officers did what they do best. They arrested and removed dangerous criminal offenders from American communities. ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations Acting Assistant Director Patricia Hyde said in a statement, removing these criminal alien offenders from Georgia neighborhoods makes for much safer communities, and that is exactly what the men and women of ICE work to accomplish every day across our great nation. A total of 1,226 undocumented immigrants were arrested as part of the operation in Georgia, ICE said. Of those, 720 individuals had been convicted or charged with a crime in the United States. Additionally, 5 individuals were arrested from the same address, which belonged to a trucking company ICE says is known for employing undocumented immigrants. Hyde said while only half of the arrests were those with criminal histories, make no mistake, every one of those undocumented immigrant offenders apprehended during this operation was in violation of U.S. immigration law. ICE officials released the names and charges of 9 individuals hailing from Mexico, El Salvador, Romania, and Honduras. Other names and charges were not released. Many immigration cases and violations are civil violations and not criminal acts, according to Berardi immigration law. Overstaying a visa, violating the terms of a visa, or simply existing while undocumented are civil offenses. While they may still result in deportation or removal, these violations have typically been handled through civil court and have not included jail time. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, August 12, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,